In this video, I'm going to be building the drawers that go into the vanity cabinet that I made and installed for my bathroom 3 years ago. And I'm not looking for anything fancy or complicated here. I'm just going to be using 1/2-inch plywood. I have a piece right here that I think will be big enough to build all 3 drawers. I did some quick layout on the sheet and discovered that it isn't big enough. That's the thing about drawers, they take up a lot of material. So I went digging some more and I found some more pieces, and I'll use these for the bottoms. The bottoms are the biggest part of the drawer. So with that figured out, I can start cutting. The first thing I'm going to do is break down the bigger sheet into smaller parts that I can cut safely on the table saw. So those are the parts for the front and back. What I need from the rest of the sheet are the side pieces. And as luck would have it, it's just the right length to get 2 sides out of each strip. So I'll bring it back to the table saw and start cutting those to the same widths as the fronts and the backs. All right, so that's it for the sides, fronts, and backs. What I'm doing now is cutting out the bottom panels in 3 drawers, so I need 3 of these. And then again, the top one is about 2 inches smaller. Now this panel is obviously being recycled. I got some big screw holes on this side, but on the other side, got some pretty small ones. And I'm just going to fill those up with putty and sand the whole panel smooth. Alright, now that I have all the parts ready, I can start putting them together. I'll start with the one that goes on top, the smallest one. And this is the one that gets notched in the back, but I'm just going to put it together in the regular way before I do that and cut the notch after. So I'm going to start with the front and back. And the glue that I'm going to be using is polyurethane construction adhesive. Get a nice bead along the edge of the plywood and then fasten the panel in place with 1 1/4 inch brads. It's worth mentioning that I'm putting the good side in on this front and back panel because you'll never see the back on the inside and you'll never see the front on the outside because it'll be covered by the real drawer front. I was putting the last one together and I came up with kind of a neat idea. I took one of my older clamps, here let me undo it, and I added this wing to it so that it would actually support the panel as it's sitting there. What I was doing was I was trying to hold it up on the end here with one hand and drive the nail with the other, and it was sliding back and getting glue on the inside. So this should help out with that. I left the glue to dry overnight, and now I'm getting ready to put the sides on. And the way I'm going to fasten those is mainly with glue, but now that I have my new dowel joiner, I thought I would use it here. I'm going to put a dowel up near the top on the front and the back, and that'll go deeper in the front and the back than it will in the side so that it doesn't poke through the side. You will not be able to see this dowel after it's installed, but it will add a lot of strength to the joint. The dowels do a great job of keeping everything lined up and keeping the panels in place. All I need to do is get a couple of clamps on here to squeeze it tight together, and then I can let it dry. But in the meantime, I'm going to work on the edge banding for the top of the drawers, so I don't have to wait until they're dry to do that. When I cut out the parts for the drawers, I made the sides, fronts, and backs about 1/4 inch shorter than they actually should be. And I'm going to be capping the top of the drawers with solid wood. And this is maple, and what I'm looking for are strips that are just the same width as the plywood and 1/4 inch thick. In a very thin bead of construction adhesive on there, and I've got all the strips ready. Just putting the first one in place. I'm starting on the sides, and then I'll do the ends, or the fronts and backs. And to hold them in place, I'm just going to drive in some 3/4 inch 23 gauge pins. You can also use clamps for this, but I like to use pins. So once again, I left everything to dry overnight, and this morning I came out and I gave everything a thorough sanding, or as thorough as I think that these need. I generally don't consider bathroom drawers to be fine furniture, so I'm not going to go overboard with this. All I wanted to do was to make sure that it was clean and all the sharp edges were gone. What I need to do next is cut the notch into this drawer. And I've already marked out where I need to cut it. And I'm going to do that using my mini table saw sled. I'm going to cut through the back first in both places. Then I'm going to remove that piece. And then I'm going to cut through the bottom and go in as far as the notch goes. And then finish that cut by plunging the table saw blade up through it. With the notch cut, all I need to do is build sides around it. And I've got this piece of plywood left over from cutting the sides. I'm going to rip that down to the right width. And then I'm going to cut that down to the right length for the sides. And then I got to thinking about it, and I decided that it would be better if the corners were mitered. So I did that. And the best approach for mitered corners is to put it together before you put it in. And I'm using the old tape trick with my 35-year-old roll of masking tape that comes off in little pieces. And then the first strip that I put on was too low, so I had to redo that. And then I could get that folded up and slipped in the hole to see if it actually fits. And this looks really good. So I can go ahead and get it glued in. And this is probably the most awkward gluing I've done in quite a while. It's getting all over the place. And glue will hold this just fine, but I'm going to fire in a couple of brads just to hold it in place until the glue sets up. And then I'm going to do the majority of the finishing on these drawers when the drawers are actually installed. But I do want to get the sides done where the drawer slides go so that those will be finished and I won't have to take the drawer slides off again to do that. After the glue dried on the notch, I sanded it, very much like the rest. And the only thing left to do is to bring them in and install them. Even though the bathroom is not very big, I was going to try to film it. But I ran into a couple of small problems, as in I didn't size these drawers properly. I wound up cutting the bottom drawer twice, believe it or not. The first time I didn't cut enough off the back. And I also had to notch the middle drawer. But eventually I did get it all done, and here's how it looks finished.